It was the heavy August air that first told me something wasn't right. In Texas, you get used to the heat pressing against your skin like a damp cloth. But that day, as I pulled my old Ford pickup into the driveway of the house I'd lived in for 47 years, the air felt different, thicker, as if the place itself was holding its breath. The shutters were painted a pale green now. The deep blue I'd brushed on myself only last spring. The flower beds I'd kept with my own hands for decades were stripped bare. The soil freshly turned, as though someone had decided my rose bushes were weeds. Even the welcome mat, the one my late husband Walter bought me in 1983, was gone. I sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. My heart pounded hard enough to make my vision pulse. I'd been gone for 3 months, staying with my sister in Fort Worth after a bad fall left me needing help. My niece, Shannon, had offered to keep an eye on the place while I recovered. She'd smiled sweetly and said, "Don't you worry, Aunt Mary. I'll make sure it's exactly the way you left it." But the second I stepped out of the truck, I knew she'd lied. From inside, I could hear laughter loud, unfamiliar voices. Country music thumped faintly, the bass vibrating through the wooden porch boards. And then, the front door swung open. A tall man in muddy boots and a stained baseball cap stepped out, holding a beer. He froze when he saw me, his smile fading into something almost territorial. Can I help you, ma'am?" he asked. I felt my jaw tighten. "You can start by telling me why you're standing on my porch." He blinked, then laughed like I'd told a joke. "Your porch? Sorry, lady, but this here's Shannon's house now. She said her aunt moved away for good." My pulse roared in my ears. "The house is still in my name," I said, my voice low but steady. "And I didn't give anyone permission to change that." Before he could answer, Shannon appeared in the doorway. Her hair was bleached platinum now, her skin tanned to leather, and her eyes held none of the warmth I remembered. "Oh, Aunt Mary," she said, almost mockingly. "You're back." I stepped forward, the boards creaking under my weight. "Of course I'm back. This is my home." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "You're not welcome here anymore." The words hit me harder than my fall had months ago. I wanted to ask her why. I wanted to demand an explanation, to see the girl who used to spend summers chasing fireflies in this yard. But before I could speak, something moved inside the house's shadow, darting away from the front hall. I caught a glimpse of boxers stacked against the walls, furniture I didn't recognize, and a sheet of paper tacked to the mantel. It looked like a document official, with bold lettering at the top. "Shannon," I said slowly, "what did you do?" Her hand tightened on the doorknob, and for just a second, I saw a flicker of fear in her face, but then it was gone, replaced by that smug smirk. "I'm only protecting what's mine," she said. I took a step closer. "It's not yours." "Not yet," she whispered. That was the moment I knew this wasn't just some family misunderstanding. Something had happened while I was gone, something deliberate, and whatever it wasn't going to be solved with polite conversation. The man in the boots shifted uncomfortably. "Sean, maybe we should talk about this. Go inside," she snapped at him, not taking her eyes off me. He obeyed, disappearing into my house as though I were the intruder. Shannon leaned in, her voice dropping to a hiss. "If you don't walk away now, Aunt Mary, you're going to regret it." For the first time in my life, I realized my own family might see me as the enemy. And standing there, staring at the woman who once called me her second mother, I felt something colder than betrayal. I felt fear. I didn't turn back to my truck right away. Instead, I planted my feet on the porch like roots, refusing to move. My house smelled faintly of something sharp, bleach, maybe drifting out into the humid air. Underneath it was another scent, fainter but familiar, like the old cedar chest in my bedroom. The chest where I kept my will, my property deed, and every important paper I'd ever owned. "Shannon," I said, trying to keep my voice calm, "we can talk about this. Just let me inside." She folded her arms. "Not going to happen." I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. Her eyes darted to it, and her posture shifted defensive. "What are you doing?" "Calling the sheriff," I said. "If you've been living here without my permission, that's trespassing." She laughed, but it was too loud, too forced. "You really think anyone's going to take your side? You're just an old lady who can't keep up anymore. I've been paying the bills while you were gone." "That was temporary," I snapped, "and you know it." Her smile faltered for a heartbeat. Then she stepped aside just enough for me to glimpse inside, not as an invitation, but as a taunt. The living room was stripped of my quilted couch and my wall of framed family photos. In their place sat a sleek gray sectional, a massive flat screen, and boxers stacked like fortresses. "Where's my furniture?" I asked. "Sold it," she said simply. The floor seemed to tilt under me. "You sold my things. They were old, outdated. I needed the space." I gripped the door frame to steady myself. That cedar chest in my bedroom flashed in my mind again. My voice dropped to a near whisper. "Shannon, did you go through my bedroom?" She didn't answer, and that silence told me everything. I turned toward the driveway, my pulse quickening. My lawyer's number was still in my contacts. I just had to get in my truck, call him, and the sound of footsteps behind me made me stop. Heavy, deliberate steps. I turned to see the man in the boots again. Only this time, he wasn't holding a beer. He was holding a folder. "Got something you should see," he said, handing it to me with a strange mix of pity and warning. Inside the folder was a set of photocopied papers. The top page was a quitclaim deed, a legal document that transfers ownership of property, my property. The date on the signature line was from last month, and scrawled in a messy, unmistakable hand was my name, except I hadn't signed anything. I looked up sharply. "This is a forgery." The man shifted uncomfortably. "Look, lady, I don't know what's going on between y'all, but if that's your name on there, the county's already recorded it. As far as the law's concerned, she owns the place now." The world narrowed to the rustling of those papers in my trembling hands. Shannon was watching me, her arms crossed, her lips curled into something between triumph and defiance. "You forged my signature," I said, my voice barely more than a breath. She shrugged. "I did what I had to do." The cicadas in the trees screeched louder, their shrill song filling the space between us. I could feel my heart pounding, my breath quickening. Every instinct screamed at me to shout, to call 911, and to demand justice right there on the spot. But then I saw the way Shannon's eyes darted to the side, as if checking whether someone inside was listening. That shadow I'd seen earlier moved again, crossing the hallway. There was someone else here, someone I didn't recognize. And suddenly, I knew this wasn't just Shannon's scheme. This was bigger. I stepped forward, angling my body so I could see past Shannon into the hallway. The figure was gone now, but the faint creak of a floorboard gave away their movement upstairs. Whoever it was, they were trying not to be noticed, but they underestimated how well I knew the sounds of my own house. "Who else is here?" I demanded. Shannon smirked like a teenager caught with a secret. "A friend, none of your business. Everything in that house is my business." "You keep saying that," she said, leaning her shoulder against the doorframe. "But the thing is, legally, it's not anymore." I tightened my grip on the folder the man in boots had given me. The paper felt heavier than it should, the edges biting into my palm. My stomach knotted. I couldn't afford to let her see the fear gnawing at me. "Not yet." "You're bluffing," I said, though my voice wavered. Shannon didn't answer. She stepped back and, without breaking eye contact, called up the stairs. "You can come down now." The creak of footsteps returned, slow and deliberate, and then he appeared, a tall man in a wrinkled denim shirt, his hair graying at the temples, a faint scar tracing the line of his jaw. His eyes swept over me like I was a problem to be solved, not a person. "Is this her?" he asked. "This is her," Shannon replied. He didn't offer a handshake. Instead, he reached into his shirt pocket and pulled out a key ring, my house keys, dangling from the leather strap I'd had since 1989. "How did you get those?" I asked, my voice low. "Shannon gave them to me," he said. "I'm the one who changed the locks." The words hit like a physical blow. "Changed the locks? Why?" I asked. He glanced at Shannon, then back at me. "Because this place is worth more than you realize. And some people don't appreciate what they've got until it's gone." It wasn't just my house they wanted. It was something in it. The cedar chest. I took a slow breath, steadying myself. "You know there's a felony charge for forging a deed," I said, keeping my eyes on Shannon. "Prison time. Big fines." Her smirk faltered. The man's eyes narrowed. "Careful," he said, his tone calm but edged with threat. "You're not in a position to make accusations you can't prove." The urge to snap back burned hot, but I forced myself to think. If I could get into the house, I could confirm whether the chest was still there, and if it wasn't, I'd know just how far they'd gone. I softened my voice. "Fine, if you're so sure you own it, then you won't mind me grabbing a few personal items I left behind." Shannon crossed her arms tighter. Not today. Then when? She hesitated, eyes flicking toward the man. He gave the faintest shake of his head, and my stomach dropped. She wasn't the one in control, here he was. The cicada's scream rose again in the heat, and a bead of sweat slid down my back. I knew I couldn't win a shouting match on the porch. I needed leverage. The man in boots, still lingering at the edge of the driveway, caught my eye and mouthed 2 words, "Call him." It took me a beat to realize he meant the county clerk. I nodded almost imperceptibly, then turned on my heel and walked back to my truck without another word. As soon as I shut the door, I locked it, started the engine, and pulled out my phone. My hands trembled as I dialed the clerk's office, praying someone would still be there this late in the afternoon. A woman's voice answered, "County Records, how can I help you?" "This is Margaret Avery," I said, forcing my voice steady. "I need to verify a quitclaim deed recorded last month on my property, 412 Oak Lane." There was a pause, the sound of typing. Then, "Yes, ma'am, recorded on the 15th. It's unusual though." My pulse quickened. "Unusual how?" "The witness signature," she said slowly. "It's from a notary we've had problems with before." I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles whitening. "What kind of problems?" "Signatures that don't match. Documents signed by people who were out of the state at the time." My breath caught. Out of the state exactly where I'd been when this so-called transfer happened. "Can you send me a copy of that record?" I asked. "I can," she said, "but ma'am, you need to be careful. If someone's willing to fake a deed, they might be willing to do worse." I glanced back at the house. Shannon was still in the doorway, but the man was gone. The hallway behind her was dark now, and for the first time, I realized I might not just be fighting for my home. I might be fighting for my life. By the time I pulled into the parking lot of the diner on Route 27, the sun had dipped low enough to paint the horizon in bruised purples and deep orange. I needed a place with people around, somewhere I could think without feeling the weight of that menace stare from behind a locked door. Inside, the smell of frying onions and coffee greeted me like an old friend. The waitress, Cheryl, gave me a puzzled look. "Margaret, haven't seen you in here since before." She trailed off, catching herself. "Yeah," I said quietly, sliding into a booth near the back. "Things have been complicated." Cheryl didn't press. She just brought me coffee and left me to it. I set the folder from the man in boots on the table and opened it. Inside was a printed photogranny, taken from an angle like someone was hiding when they shot it. It showed the man from earlier, the one who'd changed my locks, standing in my living room. His hand was on the cedar chest. In the next photo, the chest was open, its lid propped back. The image was too dark to see exactly what was inside, but I could make out something wrapped in oilcloth. I remembered the feel of that cloth. My late husband had hidden it there the winter before he died. He'd never told me exactly what it was, only that if anything ever happened to him, I'd know what to do. And now someone else had their hands on it. The man in boots slid into the booth opposite me without asking. "You saw the pictures," he said. I kept my voice low. "What's in that chest?" "That's for you to tell me," he said. "All I know is people are willing to go to dangerous lengths to get it." I studied him. "Why help me?" He sipped his coffee before answering. "Because I don't like thieves, especially ones who think they can rewrite the truth on paper." "Then why not go to the sheriff?" He gave a humorless smile. "The sheriff's brother-in-law is the one you saw upstairs." A cold weight settled in my stomach. That meant there would be no help coming from law enforcement, not here. "What do you want me to do?" I asked. "Get inside tonight. See if the chest is still there. If it is, take what's inside and hide it somewhere only you know. If it's gone." He didn't finish the sentence. I nodded slowly. "They've changed the locks." "That's where I come in," he said, sliding a small brass key across the table. "This'll get you into the back door. It's old. It hasn't been replaced." I pocketed the key, my pulse quickening. By midnight, I was parked 2 houses down from mine, lights off, engine silent. The cicadas had gone quiet, replaced by the occasional chirp of a lone cricket. The air was heavy, pressing against my skin as I crept along the side yard. The back porch creaked under my weight, but no lights came on. I slid the brass key into the lock, holding my breath. It turned with a soft click. Inside, the house smelled different, faintly of cigar smoke and something metallic. The floor under my feet felt wrong, too, sticky in spots. I made my way toward the living room. The moonlight spilling through the curtains painted the cedar chest in a silver glow. It was closed. Kneeling, I ran my fingers along the edges. No dust, they'd been in it recently. My hands trembled as I lifted the lid. The oilcloth bundle was still there. Relief surged through me, until I noticed it was lighter than it should have been. I peeled back the cloth, and my breath caught. Inside was a stack of yellowed letters, tied with fraying twine butts. The small metal box that had once been wedged beside them was gone. The box was the important part. A sudden floorboard groan behind me snapped my head around. Shannon stood in the doorway, her hair messy, eyes wild. "What are you doing here?" she hissed. Before I could answer, a shadow moved behind her. The man with the scar stepped into view, his hand slipping into his jacket pocket. "You shouldn't have come back, Margaret," he said, his voice low and steady. I gripped the bundle of letters tight. "Where's the box?" He took a slow step forward, and the dim light caught the edge of something metallic in his hand. Not a key, not a phone, something that could end this story right here if I didn't move fast. The man with the scar stepped closer, his shadow swallowing the pale light from the window. Shannon stayed frozen in the doorway, her eyes darting between us like she couldn't decide if she was afraid of him or me. "You've got something that doesn't belong to you," the scarred man said. I tightened my grip on the bundle of letters. "Neither do you," he smirked, and the glint in his hand shifted now unmistakably, a small pistol, half hidden against his thigh. "You have no idea what those letters are worth," he said. "I know they were in my house," I replied, forcing my voice steady. "Your house." He laughed softly, shaking his head. "You signed the papers, remember? I never signed anything." His smile thinned. "Then, someone signed for you." The realization landed heavy in my gut. If the deed had been transferred without my knowledge, there was a trail of forged documents somewhere, and whatever was in the missing box was valuable enough to justify it. Shannon's voice wavered. "Just give him what he wants, Margaret. Please." I looked at her. "You know what's in the box, don't you?" Her gaze dropped to the floor. The man took another step forward. "Enough talking. Hand them over." For a moment, all I could hear was the tick of the old clock in the hallway. I wasn't going to give him what he wanted, not until I knew the truth. I moved fast. The letters went into my coat pocket, and I shoved the cedar chest's lid toward him. It slammed down with a sharp crack, making him flinch just enough for me to dart past Shannon and into the hallway. His footsteps thundered after me. I hit the back door, but before I could get it open, a hand clamped on my shoulder. I twisted, driving my elbow back into his ribs. He grunted, loosening his grip, and I slipped free. Outside, the night air hit me like a wave, cool and damp. My feet pounded against the grass as I cut toward the side yard. That's when headlights flared across the driveway. The man in boots, my unlikely ally from the diner, was there, leaning out the driver's side window of a battered pickup. "Get in." I didn't hesitate. I yanked the passenger door open and threw myself inside just as the scarred man emerged from the back porch. The truck fishtailed onto the street, tires squealing. We didn't speak for the first mile. The only sounds were the engine's growl and my ragged breathing. "Finally," he said, "you still got what was in the chest." I patted my coat pocket. "The letters, yes, but the box is gone." His jaw tightened. "Then, they've got the evidence." "Evidence of what?" I asked. He kept his eyes on the road. "Your husband was part of something, an old land deal, illegal, the kind of thing that can still bring people down, even decades later. That box had the original survey maps and signed affidavits, which means whoever holds it can prove half this town's property lines were shifted illegally, including yours." I sat back, the weight of it hitting me. "So, if they control the box, they can keep the truth buried. And if you had it," he said, "you could blow it all wide open." We drove another 5 miles before he pulled into a gravel lot beside an abandoned grain silo. The air smelled faintly of rust and old hay. "This is as far as I can take you tonight," he said. "You'll be safer here for a while. Tomorrow, we start looking for that box." I hesitated before getting out. "And if they find me first," he met my eyes, "then you better hope those letters are worth dying for." Inside the silo, the air was cold and still. I sat against the curved wall, the bundle of letters in my lap. The twine was rough under my fingers as I untied it. Each envelope was addressed to my husband, dated between 1978 and 1981. The handwriting was unfamiliar, elegant, deliberate. The first letter began with, "We can't move forward until the surveyor agrees to sign." By the time I finished the third one, I realized these weren't just love letters or personal notes. They were detailed accounts of deals, payoffs, and promises. And every one of them was signed with the same initials, RH. I didn't know who RH was, but I knew who would. And if I was right, she lived 2 towns over, in a place where no one ever locked their doors because they all thought trouble never came that far. Dawn crept in through the cracks of the siloed door, painting the dusty air with faint gold. I hadn't slept naturally. Every creak in the metal shell had sounded like footsteps. By the time the bootsman returned, carrying a thermos of coffee and a paper bag of biscuits, I was already standing. "Are you sure you want to do this today?" he asked, handing me the bag. "I don't have a choice," I said. "If RH is who I think she is, she knows where that box went." He studied me for a moment, then nodded toward the truck. "Let's get moving before they realize you're gone." The road out of town was 2 lanes of cracked asphalt, cutting through flat, empty fields. We passed rusting tractors, barns that leaned like they were tired of standing, and the occasional mailbox tilted from years of wind. Finally, we turned down a gravel drive, flanked by oak trees. At the end sat a pale blue farmhouse, its porch sagging but clean. A rocking chair swayed gently in the morning breeze. "She's in there," I said, my pulse quickening. The bootsman gave a low whistle. "You're about to walk into the lion's den, Margaret." "I've lived there most of my life," I muttered, stepping out of the truck. The woman who opened the door was older than me, with sharp eyes and a neat silver bun. She didn't look surprised to see me. "Margaret," she said, as if my name were something she'd been expecting to speak. "Come in." The air inside smelled faintly of lemon polish and old paper. Every wall was lined with bookshelves, the spines faded from years of sunlight. "You know why I'm here," I said. She gestured toward the kitchen table. "You've read the letters." Then I sat, the wood cool under my hands. "You were writing to my husband. About land deals. About bribes." "Not bribes," she corrected, pouring tea into 2 mismatched cups. "Payments for silence. There's a difference." My chest tightened. "You forged my signature." "No," she said simply. "I paid someone else to do it." I stared at her, the calm in her voice more chilling than any threat. "Why?" "Because your husband promised me the box," she said, her gaze steady. "And when he died, the deal died with him. But I couldn't have you stumbling into it by accident. Too many people would get hurt. Too many powerful people," I said. Her lips curved faintly. "Now you're catching on." Before I could reply, the sound of tires crunching over gravel snapped my head toward the window. A black SUV rolled to a stop beside the farmhouse. The bootsman was already moving, hand on the small of my back. "We need to leave. Now." But RH stayed seated, sipping her tea like nothing outside mattered. The SUV doors opened, and 2 men stepped out, both dressed in dark suits that didn't belong anywhere near a Texas farm. One carried a leather briefcase, the other, something heavier hidden under his jacket. "They're not here for you," RH said, her tone almost amused. "They're here for me, but you'll be a bonus." My mind raced. If we stayed, we would be caught. If we ran, we were targets. "Margaret," the bootsman hissed. "Back door." We slipped into the hallway just as the front door burst open. The sound of heavy boots echoed behind us, and RH's voice carried through the air, calm and measured, as if she were welcoming them in. The kitchen's rear door led to a narrow porch. We were halfway down the steps when the sharp crack of a gunshot split the air. Wood splintered near my feet. "Go," the boatsman shouted, shoving me toward the tree line. We ran, the grass whipping at our legs. Another shot rang out, closer this time, and the smell of gunpowder drifted on the wind. By the time we reached the shelter of the oaks, I could barely breathe. My hands shook as I clutched the letters to my chest. "Why are they after her?" I gasped. "Because she didn't keep her end of the bargain," he said. "And now you're holding the only thing left, tying all of this together." I looked down at the bundle in my hands. "Then we need to find the box before they do." He met my eyes, and in that moment, I knew the chase had just become a race. We didn't go back to the farmhouse. Not that day. Not with 2 men in dark suits standing between us and the truth. Instead, the bootsman drove us an hour west, into a part of Texas where the hills rolled low, and the wind carried the scent of cedar. We stopped at a rundown storage facility. Its metal units faded to the color of old pennies. "This is where he kept it," he said, cutting the engine. I turned toward him. "How do you know?" "Because I helped him move it here," he said simply. "Your husband didn't trust banks, or anyone else, for that matter. The key he produced was small, brass, and worn smooth from years of being handled. He slid it into the lock of Unit 14, and with a groan of metal, the door rolled up. The air inside was thick with dust. Piles of cardboard boxes lined the walls, some sagging from moisture. Old furniture sat under sheets, their shapes ghost-like in the dim light. "Where?" I asked. He moved to the far corner, kneeling beside a trunk heavy wooden, with iron hinges dulled by time. A brass plate on the lid bore my husband's initials. When we opened it, the smell hit first dry paper, leather, and something faintly metallic. Inside were stacks of folders, each labeled in my husband's precise handwriting. I pulled one free. The first page was a contract for land I'd never seen, signed with my name, my real name, only. I'd never signed it. The deeper I dug, the worse it became. Deeds, transfers, letters, and a ledger that read like a hit list of powerful names, renters, judges, councilmen, all with dollar amounts scribbled beside them. "This is enough to ruin half the county," I whispered. The bootsman nodded. "And enough to get you killed if the wrong person knows you have it." A sharp click echoed through the unit. I froze. It wasn't the sound of a door, it was the sound of a gun being cocked. "You should have burned it." A voice drawled from the shadows near the entrance. RH stepped into the strip of light, a revolver steady in her hands. The calm, silver-haired woman I'd met that morning was gone. Her eyes were cold now, her voice stripped of its politeness. "I told them I'd handle you myself," she said. "They're waiting outside for me to finish." I straightened, even as my heart pounded so loud it drowned out my thoughts. "You forged my name, you took my land, and now you think you can walk away from this?" Her lips twitched in something almost like pity. "Margaret, there are no heroes here. Your husband was worse than all of us combined. The only difference is, he got caught." She stepped closer, the barrel of the revolver unwavering. That was when the boatsman moved fast, too fast for her to react. He grabbed the lid of the trunk and slammed it up, the corner catching her wrist. The gun clattered to the concrete, and I dove for it, the metal cold in my shaking hands. For a moment, all three of us froze. My breath came in ragged bursts. I could pull the trigger, I could end it here. But instead, I stepped back, keeping the barrel between us. "You're going to walk out of here," I said, my voice low. "And you're going to leave Texas. You come near me again, and I won't miss." Her gaze held mine for a long, dangerous moment. Then she smiled, not with fear, but with something worse. Acceptance. "You'll regret this," she said softly, and turned toward the sunlight. By the time we left the unit, the SUV was gone. She was gone. I stood in the doorway, the box between us, the weight of it heavy in more ways than one. "What now?" the bootsman asked. I looked out at the horizon, where the sky met the scrubland in a haze of gold and heat. "I'm not burning it," I said finally. "I'm not hiding it. People need to know what's in here." His jaw tightened. "That's going to make you a target." I met his gaze. "I've been a target since the day my husband died. The difference now, I know why." We drove back toward town as the sun began to set, the sky painted in streaks of pink and deep orange. I thought of the years I'd spent in that house, the walls I'd thought were mine, and the doors I'd opened without knowing what waited on the other side. "You think they'll come for you again?" he asked quietly. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I watched the shadows lengthen across the fields. "They will," I said at last. "But next time, I'll be ready." That night, I sat alone in my kitchen, the box open on the table. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound. I reached for a ledger, flipping to a page I hadn't seen before, one that wasn't about land or bribes. It was a list of dates, and next to each date, a single name. The last name on the list was mine. I stared at it until the lines blurred, until I could no longer tell if the shaking in my hands was from fear or resolve. I closed the book, turned off the light, and let the darkness settle. Because some stories don't end when the last page is turned. Some stories wait. And this one was just getting started.